Okay, I think we can start now. Um, my name is Sean No. I'm the co-founder and CEO of VF Franchise Consulting. Thank you for joining us today. We really value the 60 minutes that we will be sharing together. We've got an awesome group of panelists that will briefly introduce themselves in a minute. And today's audience is really diverse. We've got people from all over Asia Pacific, including Korea, Japan, to Taiwan, to Hong Kong, to Malaysia, to all over Southeast Asia. So hopefully we will have some very, very good questions today from the attendees. A little bit about us and COEX. For nearly 2 decades, VF Franchise Consulting and COEX have proudly partnered with VitRev, the largest franchise show in Vietnam, to drive the franchising sector in Vietnam. Together, we have witnessed and supported the remarkable rise of franchising, really in one of Asia's fastest growing market, a market with over 105 million people. And of course, as a region, nearly 700 million people in Southeast Asia. VietRep 2025 continues this legacy as Vietnam's largest international franchise show. And it is showcasing nearly 250 exhibitors, visitors, and exhibitors coming from 20 countries, of course, including foreign brands as well as Vietnamese brands. They come from different sectors in food and beverage, in retail, in education, in fitness, in beauty, and services, you name it. It is actually one of the hottest franchising sector today. So as an exhibitor, you'll have the ability to tap into many, many attendees. We estimate over 30,000 attendees this year, consisting of investors, entrepreneurs, corporate executives, and the like. And of course, Vietnam is fast becoming the ideal gateway to other parts of Southeast Asia. If you're not exhibiting, but you want to attend, you'll have access to seminars, workshops, panel sessions, and of course, you'll come face to face with some of the best franchising brands all across Asia Pacific, as well as North America and other parts of the world. And of course, it is a great opportunity to reconnect and to connect with new franchisors, CEOs, and the like. A little bit about the franchising sector about Vietnam. The market size, according to the latest statistics, is approximately about $5 billion for the franchise sector. That is a very large number. It's certainly a lot bigger than it used to be. It's growing 12 to 15% a year. And right now, according to the Ministry of Industry and Trade, there are approximately 300 foreign brands already registered in Vietnam. Of course, many of these brands are in food and beverage, retail, education, and fitness. The potential is very, very high. If you compare this to a similar market like the Philippines, that market is estimated to have a $22 billion franchise industry with a very similar economics, very similar population, and as you can see, a very good picture of future potential growth here in Vietnam. Now, with that said, I would love to welcome the panelists. It would not be fair for me to introduce them as I think I would do them injustice. So let me introduce to you the panelists. We'll start with Mr. Kai. Kai, take it over.
Hi everyone, I'm Kai from GapMaps, and our area of expertise is specializing in location intelligence. What that means is we help retailers and brands make smarter growth decisions by bringing together key demographic indicators like demographic data, competitor networks, and point of interest data into a single interactive map. This lets you identify the best location and plan networks with confidence. We operate across Asia, the Middle East, Australia, New Zealand, and more recently in North America as well. And we work with a lot of leading brands like McDonald's, Starbucks. In Vietnam would be brands like Highland Coffee, even brands like Chargy. So in short, Gap Maps really takes the guesswork out of site selection and market planning as well. Thank you, Sean.
Hey, now over to me. Thank you, Kai. And first, thank you, Shan and VF and COEX for organizing this webinar, and thank you for inviting Belgo. I'm Victor, franchise director at Belgo. I was born in Belgium, but live mainly all my life in Asia. I am now based in Vietnam. I was before 5 years in South Korea. I was also in Thailand, in Singapore. I am Asia enthusiastic. A bit about Belgo. It's a Belgian craft beer and pub chain founded in Vietnam by two Belgians, Gauthier and François, back in July 2016, so almost a decade now. What I like to say is that the long story short, we both are brewing in Belgium. We dismantled it, we put it on a boat, and we brought it back to Vietnam. We mantled it identically. So it's a Belgian brewery in Vietnam, in Asia. So we are proud to brew beers in Vietnam with for Belgian Brewmaster Guild. We have now a core selections of 8 beers. But the best part is we are also operating our own venues. We have 5 gastro pubs in Ho Chi Minh City region, 4 in the city, and 1 north in Binh Duong. So I would say, in summary, we are crafting and serving our own beers with Belgian brasserie type homemade food, served in a unique and cozy pub atmosphere. And now we are looking for like-minded entrepreneurs to bring the Belgo experience all over Asia. And I would say last but not least, we are opening Belgo Thailand in December 2025. Thank you. And now over Miss Tu.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Sean, for inviting us for this webinar. I think that is the right time because a lot of foreign franchisors also want to expand the business in Southeast Asia. And I'm a senior associate at TK and Gibbon. I based in Hanoi. And TK Gibbon have office in Southeast Asia. We have office in Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Myanmar, Indonesia. And we are the full service law firm that we advise in the commercial, IP, GRD, and I trace that. And for the franchise, we assist a lot of many famous brands expand the business in Vietnam and other Southeast Asia. We assist them in review the legal document, the franchise agreement, localization of the document, and also assist to for operating the franchise in the Southeast Asia. Thank you. Over to Chris.
Thank you so much. Lovely to be here with all of you. And likewise, thank you to Sean. My name is Chris Elkin. Again, my funny accent comes from Northern Ireland, but similar to Victor, I've been living in the region for 25 years, married here in Vietnam, and my 6-year-old speaks much better Vietnamese than I do, but I keep trying. So yes, folks, I'm from Doodle Design. I founded this business, 8 years ago now, and we help organizations use and apply this thing called human-centered design thinking, really to help them make much more informed customer-centric decisions. So we do a lot of work in helping people research and identify unmet customer needs, to co-create with your teams, to train your teams to co-create solutions with customers, and ultimately to make sure we go to market with the right fit brand product offering. So yeah, thanks again. Look forward to sharing more.
Well, thanks for that, Chris, and all the panelists. We've got an exciting agenda today. It's going to be very fast-paced. To the audience attending today, we have received your key questions in advance. If you did not submit any questions previously, you may do so in the chat box today. And if we have sufficient time, we will address some of them. Okay, so gentlemen and ladies, ladies and gentlemen, let's dig right into it with the easiest question, and that is about market entry challenges. Right, that's going to be the easiest one of the day. What are the biggest hurdles international franchises face when entering Vietnam and Southeast Asia, and how can they overcome them?
I'll probably start with this one, Sean, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest hurdles we see is understanding whether the market is genuinely ready for your brand. And we want to look beyond things like just population size and GDP growth, because that's a very larger than macro piece that people tend to sort of look at first. At GetMaps, we really break down the readiness into things like consumer demographics, retail maturity, and the competitive intensity, as well as the availability of these sort of infrastructures in whatever market that you're choosing to enter. Many brands tend to skip these steps and either enter too soon or miss the right timing. And really, our role here is to provide an evidence-based picture so that you know not just if you can enter, but where and at what pace as well. And I'll probably go into a little bit more detail as well. So if you're talking about looking at it from a macro market review, so slightly more granular than just GDP and population size, we map out the total retail potential using very granular demographic data that we built down to 150-meter grid. Just to imagine, 150 meters is very likely, shorter than a row of inline shop houses you will find anywhere in Southeast Asia. So that's very granular data. And with this granularity, we understand where people stay, we understand where they work, and whether or not they have that discretionary income to really purchase what you're selling. And that's very important because this really makes up what we call your addressable market. And you'll very likely hear me say this term quite a few times throughout today's session. So that's the total retail potential. We then want to also map out your competitor landscape to see how saturated that category that you are intending to enter in a particular country. As an example, in Vietnam's convenience sector, the bulk of the stores might still be concentrated very much in that tier 1 city mostly. That's a very clear indicator, leaving a clear gap in that tier 2 and tier 3 as that sort of white space within that country. And maybe one more thing I will also sort of mention is that network potential again. By modeling how many stores the market can realistically sustain for that whatever category that you intend to bring in, you can also understand where it's distributed across city tiers as well. So not just the tier 1 cities, but what does the tier 2 and tier 3 penetration sort of look like as well? Because we really want to balance that growth with sustainability. Keeping these three top of mind really lets you know whether, again, not only if you can enter, but at where and at what pace to do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Kai. Really interesting. This data analytics, making decision based on data is something that every company has to make. And, when we talk to franchisors all around the world, one of the key things they always ask me is, what is the market potential for markets like Vietnam? What is it for the Philippines? What is it for Korea? And boy, if they had a tool and precise data like this, they could actually answer those questions themselves. And then based on that, can actually prioritize which markets they want to focus on first. So thank you for that. Anybody else want to tackle this question?
Yeah, actually, from the legal perspective, we think that the biggest challenges is about the legal compliance because the Southeast Asia do not have the uniform franchise specific law across the Southeast Asia, and each country will have their individual or their own law and requirement for the franchise activity, and both the franchisor and franchisee of each country need to comply and understand to such regulation. And for example, some countries will have the specific law like Vietnam, Indonesia, or Malaysia. But for other country, the law regulate a franchise will be in many legislation maybe in under the IP law or consumer protection law or competition law. And this is quite key important for the franchisor when they want to expand to jurisdiction should be understand about this. For example, because we give some like Vietnam or Indonesia, when the franchisor want to expand the franchise in such country, they need to register the franchise registration with the authority before legally operate the franchise. And they also may need to, for other countries, they may also need to satisfy some disclosure document and to the franchisee before entering to the franchise agreement. Or they also need to register the trademark. So just when they quite understand or comply with the legal requirement, so the business will be more smoothly and for can stable um, running in practice.
Thank you, Mr. That is actually one of the key questions as well that we get asked is on the legal aspect. And I know in Southeast Asia, like you said, Vietnam does has franchising laws, but it's actually very straightforward and very manageable if you're prepared. And some countries are a little bit more difficult and challenging, but certainly for sure you can overcome them. Chris, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just to chime into that original question, just one observation I've seen many times with franchisees coming into Vietnam is what I call the assumption trap. You know, we all assume what's worked well where we come from is going to be perfect fit here for Vietnam. And you know, I've even seen this so ingrained, like let's call it not just individual or team, but institutional bias, where we have fallen in love with our own idea, our concept, our offering. So what I always try to encourage is the importance of building on the data, what the data is sharing. Yes, as Sean and Kai have shared, but also getting out there on the street and taking your idea and getting it in front of your target audiences as quickly as possible, so we have that reality of what people really think and how we then need to really localize and shape that to be the best fit for the market. So very important to fight assumption traps. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you very much, Chris. Great point. In franchising, of course, some of the terminology we use for that is localization, but it's not just localization of products and services, but it may potentially be the brand itself, like you said. Okay, let's move on to the next question, and that is about brand consistency and localization. So a great segue into this topic. How can brands adapt to local tastes and cultures, but at the same time not lose their global consistent identity that they have all over the world, including their home country? Maybe Chris, you can tackle that. That seems to be down your alley.
Yeah, that kind of builds a little on just that point before. So again, when we come into the market, not holding on to our assumptions for too long. So I think in the automotive industry, for example, worked a lot with some of the brands coming in from Korea. You often have lots of great ideas in the home market, but then how do we create environments and a culture when we start employing people here in Vietnam, that there's a culture that how would you say, enables people, the teams, to go out into the marketplace, to go and observe what's really happening amongst those consumers that you want to target. So what we often encourage is that when organizations come in, there's this some sort of like feedback loops or co-creative ways of collaborating and training your teams to be able to bring the teams from other markets, to be able to bring these people we're collaborating with, our own teams or partners locally, and have workshopping amongst them to invite the customer, the end consumer, or social media or these KOLs, these kind of influencers who have immense amounts of everyday insight, into what the market likes, dislikes, what the behaviors, the rituals are that happen here every day on the street that we can really deeply learn from very quickly. So by having these kind of like co-creative kind of workshops with all these different stakeholders up close and personal with people who are close to the street, they're close to the customers, you're often then able to, how would you say, build on the hero of what makes your brand special, but then find those little nuances of how that's going to resonate here in the local marketplace. Great example here. It's debatable. Sorry if McDonald's in the room, but it's been slow to take off. Various reasons for that. Versus organizations like Lotteria that have found very specific target audiences, niches, youth, and locations, as Kai might have mentioned before, where they are razor sharp focused on locations, opportunities, times in the day, types of people to localize the brand for. And as you know, in Vietnam, oftentimes it's getting into the nuances of sharing of meals, connecting of groups, being close to schools where their audiences are, for example. So in short, you need to invite your customer into the creative process. You need to go and inspire and validate your ideas with them as quickly as you can to find what that secret sauce might be to then bring your brand to local relevance. Hope that gives a bit of context, Sean.
That's a great point, Chris. Victor, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, because I like what Chris said about sharing. And at Belgo, across our 5 venues, we respect our brand identity. We try to bring a bit of Belgium experience, but we are in Vietnam. And in Vietnam, you like to have large tables and mot hai bazo and cheering. And so we make very sure to have our menu, we have sharing platters, because in Vietnam, it's important to have sharing food and large tables. So I would say it's important to respect your brand identity, but it's also important to understand the local market's dining habits. And this is what we do at Belgo. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah. I also want to add that from legal perspective, because I'm a lawyer, and actually the franchise agreement is also a key tool to protect the brand consistency, because that as you come to the new country and the brand is also the key asset of your business, and you can have the provision under the franchise agreement to protect the brand consistency, the standard of the franchisor via the term and condition, the obligation and right of both party, franchisor and franchisee. For example, like the adoption of the new product or new menu, review of them when the franchisee propose on this, and this also to under the measure to ensure the quality of the brand and the standard of the franchisor, and also about the IP registration, about the trademark registration, because if you want to run a long term in the new country, the trademark should be registered for protected. And in some country, the trademark registration is very take a long time. So you should have well prepared for such registration. And also under the franchise agreement, you also can have the clause relating to the when termination of the agreement, when the franchisee breach of the any term or condition and or remedy to any breach. That is also to help to protect the brand consistency throughout many countries.
Thank you, Mr. The legal question is always one of the first things we talk about when we talk to franchisors and franchisees. And a lot of times we have a habit of, using AI or Google to download the latest franchise template. And it is not the same for every company, every business. And it is incredibly risky to do something like that and not tailor it specifically for the industry, for your business, and also for the country itself. So It's worth the investment to do it properly because it may seem cheap to do it in the beginning on your own, but if something happens, it could be devastating for your business. So best to invest the time and resources to doing it properly, whether that's Vietnam, Malaysia, Korea, or anywhere else. So great point, Miss Tu. Next question is about site selection and market research. What do you find are the most critical factors in choosing the right locations for success in Vietnam or any other country? As we hear the old adage, real estate, real estate, real estate. What's your take on that?
Well, I'll probably get this one, Sean, to start off. And there's going to be a prevailing theme with myself and Gap Maps. We really love data. So that's really that perspective that I'm always going to be looking at it from. I feel that site selection is no longer about gut feel. I mean, there is that certain element that goes into it, circling back to that whole localization conversation. But in a lot of markets in Southeast Asia, the difference between a good site and a great site could be a difference of matter of streets away. And we really use a combination of mobility data plus catchment profiling, and again, mapping that competitor layout, pinpointing that trade areas to really understand the right customers and the growth potential in whatever particular state or country that you intend to enter. That way, brands can really scale in a more structured way rather than solely relying on local intuition. And we really want to see a combination of that. So we are talking about the data front. We're coming back to mobility data once again. We analyze mobility patterns to really estimate that potential footfall at different times of the day. And this really is separated into two distinct data sets. One which I call your general population flow, which really talks about where the residents are staying, and that worker element as well. That distinction really helps us understand whether that trade area is very much a resident-driven, a workplace-driven, or a combination of both of these. Because as we know in retail, especially in F&B, you've got that day part and your night part as well, and they are patronized by two very different types of customers during the day and during the night. Another one that I would sort of add on top of that would be that store rollout strategy. You would want to prioritize expansion based on the key market indicators that are linked to high performing stores. This really creates a sequence or really a list of locations that are ranked from the least risky at the top, so that's your number one, down to the most risky based on that current trajectory of your market planning. So that can be, the bottom can be either number 10 or number 100, it doesn't matter. Top of the list is the least risky, bottom of the list is the most risky. By understanding or having this list, it really helps you to de-risk your expansion opportunities and focus on investments where you can say the likelihood of success is at its highest.
Yes, thank you for that, Kai. I've noticed, a lot of times brand owners and franchisees know the city that they are operating in. They know Ho Chi Minh City very well, and they can guess to a certain degree of accuracy that it should be here versus here. But what you're starting to see in markets like Vietnam and all across Asia really is that the big cities are no longer just the only opportunity for franchise expansion. It is the entire country now. And expanding to the rest of the country, an area where you don't know very well, and where there's a lack of real data from the government, that's when gap maps really becomes extremely useful. So thanks for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, Sean. I think the first 5 to 10, even 15 locations are probably your low-hanging fruit, if you will.
Right.
What is beyond that 15 when you want to start growing to a store count of 50 to 100 and start taking on a lot of the large veteran brands in the market? Data really helps you with that understanding that rollout plan throughout the country.
Great. Does anybody else have anything to add? We'll move on to the next section, and this is one of my favorites. and it's about partner selection, franchise partner selections. I'm sure there's a few in the audience today that want to know how we select franchise partners and how should we structure that to protect ourselves. Victor, you want to give a stab at it?
Yeah, I mean, it's so important. Is the number one point is to find the right partner, sharing your values, respecting the brand identity, and that's why it's important. Thank you for organizing this kind of webinar because we stay connected in the ecosystem. We're meeting new people, and we potentially have some partnership matching. So, and one thing I like about franchising, it's a human centric business model. The success, it's about relationship values, it's a really human centric business model, and so that's why I really spend time finding the right partner, also working with VF, because it's so important. It's a long-term relationship, it's like a marriage, so it's important to find a good partner, right? And it's like, if my partner is happy, I'm happy. If they are successful, I'm successful. So partner selection is the most important point. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Victor. Anybody else would like to add anything?
Yeah, actually, from legal perspective, the foreign franchisor can also carefully review about the requirement relating to local partner in such a jurisdiction, because maybe each jurisdiction also have the specific requirement for the local franchisee. For example, in Vietnam, maybe they will require that this should not an individual, but this is a local business have the business line that align with the proposal franchise business, and um, and the partner a partner with a clean legal record have a strong experience and good financial will have to maintain the relationship between party. And also you also can put in the franchise agreement some request to the franchisee, such as that they need to keep and maintain all the required license, permit, or approval for operating the franchise business during the time of the franchise agreement. And if they have any change about the ownership, they need to inform and get the approval from franchisor. Is also one of the method that can also protect of the relationship between party and keep the business can run for stable for a long time.
Absolutely, Mr. Our VF franchise consulting, one of our key roles is to help franchisors find qualified franchisees, oftentimes at the country level, either area or master franchise. And when I meet up with potential investors and groups that are interested in franchising one of our clients' brands, for example, I always share with them that I'm not here to sell you the franchise, but rather I'm here to educate you about the opportunity, and you decide for yourself whether you want to pursue this opportunity or not. Uh, you know, for uh, for very good reasons. Obviously, we select very good brands that we believe have great market potential all across Asia, and we've been very selective with that. But I have seen groups where we talk to some of the largest F&B groups, for example, in Asia, and my clients have declined to offer them the franchise, even though they want to actually do the franchise. So you want to make sure that when you are looking for the right partner, it really is like a marriage, like Victor said, it's going to last longer than most marriages because of the 10 plus 10-year license partnership. So be very careful, do your due diligence, and make sure it is not just about money, but more than that on both sides. Okay, so we'll end it there. Chris, did you want to add anything or? Okay, good. Excellent. I thought you were raised your hands.
No,
Okay.
I'm looking forward to the next question, I think.
Okay. Well, the next question is marketing and branding awareness, and this is a question we get asked all the time too. It's like, we're not number one in this sector, We're not KFC, we're not Starbucks, we're not Pizza Hut. How the heck are we going to market our brand in a country that knows nothing about us? Maybe, Chris, you can start us off?
I mean, building on Victor's point, human-centered, right? You're not solving problems, giving experiences to everyone, right? So there's always niches, there's always different ways we can really identify who we're going after and also who we're not. And also some of this will then influence what are we able to borrow from our global brand strategy that makes it relevant and appealing here locally. And oftentimes it can be very different from one positioning, one market that's going to work here in Vietnam. We work with Pizza Hut. In many ways, that's sort of in other markets, it's a sort of a cheaper fast food option of pizza. Here, it's positioned as a family dining experience. It's not a single meal experience. It's where families want something that's different from their everyday Vietnamese food, and they gravitate to that, for example, around birthday celebrations or some family special experience. And their locations are mainstream in reaching those families. And they've been very good at consistently having that positioning. They've used customer journey mapping with us, and we've identified how we entice people into those brands in mainstream media and high visibility stores, how we engage them all the way through the journey. For example, your child's having a birthday party, each little interaction and step with the staff through to getting the gift bag at the end. What is that experience? How can we continually iterate and make that better? So oftentimes it's kind of experimenting, trying different things, quickly testing those ideas with those audiences and ultimately finding out what positioning resonates best, not with everyone, but very specific types of people, certain occasions throughout the day. And that may, like I say, very widely compared to what you do in other markets. So you got to, I think, experiment. And as I mentioned before, really co-create with social media influencers directly with your audiences and equip and empower them to be able to give you feedback as quickly as possible, so you can iterate, shape, shift at pace to find the right fit for your brand positioning and whatever that media mix might be then to reach those specific audiences. So you don't have to go head to head with anyone. You can find your niche audience as well as offering. Hope that
That's a
gives.
great point. That's a great point, Chris. Yeah, you don't have to compete head to head. That is a losing business. Create that blue sea segment of that industry for yourself, and you don't have to compete on price, right? Because when you compete head to head with somebody, then ultimately it goes down, spiraling down, and oftentimes more than not, it's all about price and cost, which is something you don't want to do. Absolutely. Does anybody else have anything to add or want to add?
Yeah, probably just some key insights that I sort of observe. I mean, GapMaps is really about market planning, not so much for marketing. But I believe that one of the fastest way to sort of build awareness is to be visible where your target's customers sort of live, work, and socialize. So if you really understand where most of your addressable market are, it really helps you to brand place themselves in the right location from day one, because you're right in front of their face. Might not be a billboard, but it is a building with your brand on it in the right location after all. We have a lot of information that really talks about the age, ethnicity, gender, and what that what a spending potential sort of looks like as well. And I'm sure a lot of marketeers would love to have this information to better make sure that every dollar that they're spending, they get a higher return because they are targeting the right people.
Excellent, Kai. Thank you for that. Yeah, I agree with you. A lot of times people, when they talk to us, they say, well, Sean, we want to open up one store and maybe two stores first and see how it goes. But the reality is, if you can't scale, you're not going to have that market presence. You're not going to have that branding presence, right? I remember when I was living in Seattle, I would go to Seattle or Vancouver in Canada, and literally on the same block, you'd have three Starbucks, one right next to the other on each corner. And it's like, why did they do that? And it's, for them, it's very much about convenience, right? But at the same time, perhaps they've overdone that, but the reality is you need that presence physically to support your branding and your presence because people see that. And more these days, people are going online and even delivery apps, for example, can help with your market presence and brand awareness if you have a very good presence online. For example, Grab Food, etc. So great comments. Um, and what about the biggest success factor today? What is the single most important factor for franchise expansion in Vietnam and Southeast Asia today, in your opinion?
I'll probably go, Sean, and it's a very biased answer as well. I feel that in today's environment, market intelligence is probably a very valuable currency to look at. Regulations change, competitors move very quickly, consumer behavior also evolve constantly. So having a live view of that market and understanding where demand is growing, where competitors are really investing heavily, and where that white spaces sort of remain after the fact is really what separates brands that thrive in a particular environment rather than those that are stalling. There's a saying that I really like. Standing still is really moving backwards, especially in that fast food QSR space, because the market is growing so quickly that middle income is also growing very quickly. So if you're standing still, you're moving backwards.
It
Market
makes sense.
Yeah. So the market intelligence isn't just about knowing where your addressable market is, but it's really quantifying that potential customer base matching your target profile. And you're able to map your customers across different priority catchments based on, that demographic element again. That means you're really not chasing just the activity, you're really targeting true opportunity. So you're not lagging behind. You want to be that market leader in that space.
Excellent. Excellent. Hi,
Just
Chris. Please
just to
add.
build, yeah, just to build on the big data approach there by Kai, I think it's equipping your teams again to really get out there and observe what is happening amongst that fast changing consumer mindset, behavior, and being really cognizant what was relevant and delightful a year ago. A lot of your audiences are already moving on, to other alternatives. What's new in Vietnam? It's very fickle. It's very fast changing. People like new things quite often. So I think you need to find ways to maintain what's working well in your offering and build on that with something, taking these little experiments with your audience as inspiration from influencers to see what you can continue to improve. I think an organization that's done a great job of this is something like the 4P's Pizza offering here. They've somehow managed to continue and stay relevant, tap into wellness and the source of great quality ingredients here in Vietnam. But it's modern. Each new area that they seem to open up, it seems to be more modern, more dynamic, and still relevant with what the audience desire. So they've experimented. However, they've made incredible consistency when you go into one of those stores as well. You still feel like you're being served in the same way by the same people, whether you're in Hanoi or in the south here in Saigon. So yeah, I just hope that gives a bit more to build on what Kai shared.
Thanks for that, Chris. Would anybody else like to add?
Yeah, I think honestly, it's all about the legal compliance with the law and regulation. Because from not only from when you start to expand the business in a country, from the registration or day-to-day operation, you need to comply with the law. And for example, like Vietnam will require that the foreign franchisor before entering into the franchise agreement or legally operate the franchise activity, they need to register the franchise activity with the Ministry of Industry and Trade. And in addition, they also need to prove that they have experience, 1 year experience in the franchise activity, and they also need to disclose the franchise system to the franchisee. And Indonesia also have the same regulation. Indonesia also requires that the both franchisor and franchisee must register the franchise activity with the Ministry of Industry of Trade, and they also need to disclose the information about the franchise to the franchisee 2 weeks before enter into the franchise agreement. And they also need to report about the franchise activity annually. And for other countries like Laos, Laos also request that to ensure that the franchise agreement valid, they need to be notarized. Or Thailand also request that the disclosure request to the franchisor. So this is almost about the compliance with the law. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Tu. I would agree with everybody and everybody's comments on this. In my discussions with franchisors all across the world, what they have shared with me, based on their decades of experience of having franchising success and failures at times, because we're not all perfect. And one of the things they've shared with me, which I would agree with, is also, while all those other things are very, very important, really the biggest success factor is choosing the right partner. And if you can get it right from the very beginning, they will do almost everything that is necessary to make it successful. And if you think about it, you'll see lots of examples of that where we have great brands, but maybe not the right partner. Maybe there was a mismatch somewhere. So understanding the right partners in Vietnam, in Thailand, in Korea, Japan, you really need somebody to kind of help you do that due diligence to ensure that you are indeed, talking to the right partner. And just like a franchisee will go and interview other franchisees of the franchisor as due diligence, you also need to do something a little bit similar to that as well. Okay. And here's the big elephant in the room. It's a talk of the town, talk of the world, and it's about AI, right? What is the impact of AI in your business, and how can it be leveraged so that you can expand successfully in Vietnam or anywhere else? Anybody want to tackle that?
Maybe I can have a word on AI. AI in the brewing process, if AI is in the beer or not. Beer is what? Is water, yeast, hops, malts, sometimes fruits, but always love. And this AI cannot do, I mean, not yet. So we put a lot of love in our beers, but we are not behind. We use AI. I was discussing with for Brewmaster, hey, how do you use AI? And he's using AI in terms of market pricing. AI is really good in combining data and make analysis. So he's trying to understand how the price of hops, of yeast, of malts will increase or decrease, and then he can make a better decision in terms of stock and market pricing. But so far, love is not AI. So the love in our beers is not from AI, it's from us.
Just don't make the beer AI, Victor.
Uh,
Anybody else has anything else to add?
Yeah, true. Love is very important. To build on that, I think it's human, us, plus the AI, right? It's a partner. We at Doodle, we use it a lot in terms of doing just what Victor was saying, bringing out some sort of sense making from larger data sets, sort of co-piloting, co-creating, and some of the creative thinking of solutions. But once those solutions have actually, been inspired by human empathy, like going out onto the street, right? Actually observing not what's happened in the past that may have been captured online and AI is tapping into, but the original thinking. What is happening now, and what as a human being can we predict and with our human intuition connect the dots might happen in these trends, in these new ways that people desire us to create brands and experiences for them. So AI is not going anywhere, but I see it as something that just helps us make smarter, human-informed decisions and get there perhaps a little bit faster if we use it, along the steps that we typically take in whatever we're doing. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, I like the answers from both of you because it very much aligns with my own as well. But I just want to take a step back and sort of understand and or sort of mention that although we really love AI, but a lot of the insights that the data and all that is really produced by humans in the first place. Yes, there might be a LLM or large language model that really helps along that process, but it really starts from a human trying to produce that in the first place. And human expertise really ensures that the highest data quality is being produced. But what really excites me about AI is probably, I think, to Victor's point that he mentioned as well, is to really digest massive amount of data sets and really highlight certain patterns of opportunities that are within the market. Uh, but again, want to amplify that AI is really only as good as the data that you're feeding it as well. In other words, rubbish in, rubbish out. Without the right people producing that initial high quality inputs, the inputs can really be misleading. So AI really amplifies great data, but it doesn't really replace that expertise or that love needed to really create it in the first place.
Thanks for that, Kai. It's interesting. One of our clients is a Korean pizza brand called Go Pizza that is spreading all across Asia Pacific and soon into other parts of the world. And they leverage a lot on AI. They obviously make pizzas, and they have a topping table where they have cameras looking down on the topping table and seeing how the preparer makes the pizza. Are they putting on 20 pieces of pepperoni? Do they have cheese covered all across the dough properly? And it's all AI driven, and it's flagging the people who prepare it. It's automating that message to the store manager, to the franchisee, to the franchisor in Korea, and it's just really leveraging AI to ensure that they're getting standards and consistencies that hopefully will maintain the customer satisfaction of the product and service, right? Because that's really the main goal is to ensure that no mistakes are being made and the customer gets what they receive. And more recently, I was talking to a friend of mine in the education sector, an education entrepreneur here in Vietnam, and he was just sharing ideas on how AI is helping teachers to focus on certain students. Like the cameras would look at the students and actually see if they're paying attention, if if they're having issues, if teachers are having issues in the way they make facial gestures and that type of stuff. And a lot of it now is really, wow, it could be interesting information, but then you got to have that balance between is Big Brother looking at me too hard and too regularly. So there's a balance of that, but there's no doubt that AI is going to continue to make major impacts on everybody, and the people who survive are the people who can leverage AI to do the work, because people, like you said, Kai, are still going to be needed to drive that for them.
I'm wondering in that Go Pizza example, Sean, that if they
Yes,
had, customer profile as well, if I placed an order, would they sort of recommend extra cheese and pepperoni because I want an extra on that pizza?
exactly,
Always upsell me constantly whenever I order a
exactly.
pizza.
Yeah, no, exactly. Or they'll send you automated coupons and promotions based on your buying patterns, et cetera, et cetera. So AI is really super, I think, effective for that. Um, and then one final question before we open it up to the audience for additional questions. What do you see the future of franchising in Vietnam and Southeast Asia?
Happy to start on this one, Sean.
Please, Kai.
Uh, I would say from my standpoint is to have that early market study even before you enter the market. So don't really start with sites per se. You start with the market. You map out the full opportunity first, then pace your entry based on that blueprint. Too many brands either under-invest or miss that opportunity or window, or sometimes they might over-invest and create an internal strain because maybe the market is really oversaturated for that particular category. Having a clear data-backed expansion plan gives you more control over both the speed and sustainability. And thinking of it now, I think through the conversations that we had through the earlier questions, I believe that localization element was also mentioned at the very start. While I'm in that location intelligence business, I do agree that there is really no substitute for that local knowledge or local talent, or better to have that combination of. You can have the most comprehensive, data that's feeding into sort of the best strategy overall, but the person that's going to be executing that strategy is going to be a human. So that element cannot be forgotten. So again, that very nice, robust market and entry plan that maps out the full potential. You've got that store rollout plan, and finally that local execution that really balances high visibility for your flagship location versus understanding where the customer behavior and that on the ground challenges are located as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Kai.
Like, just maybe to segue on top of that. So I often say, have your plan, yeah, but have it loosely held. Be very open-minded to learning something new, not just on what the market research but folks tell you, but actually with you, your team, to go and observe directly for yourselves, right? Do not outsource that. Equip your team to be able to do that for themselves, to bring reality to what you're thinking of doing as quickly as possible. Not 6 months, not 1 year of planning, but within a few weeks. Let's go and observe, and let's do some initial co-creation or testing of our initial thinking to see then how we shape that plan to fit the reality.
Thanks for that, Chris. Well, guys, that concludes our panel session. Now we're opening up to the audience. In fact, we have a lot of questions. Now, some of them are a little bit related to one another, so we can address many of them together. One of the key questions that we think a lot of people in this audience will share also is, what are the legal or regulatory challenges should international franchisors anticipate when entering Vietnam, and how can they proactively address this? Ms. Tu, maybe you can address that.
Yeah, actually, thank you for this question, because it's also the key question that a lot of our clients, that the foreign franchise also come to Vietnam or Southeast Asia, because the foreign franchisor need to understand and follow the law or requirement on the franchise. They need to understand, for example, what the local requirement require them to do in such country. For the example, whether they need to establish any local presence in this country to operate the franchise, or whether they need to do any franchise registration in such country. Like, for example, like Vietnam or Indonesia or Malaysia, they will request the foreign franchisor to register the franchise activity for legally operate the franchise activity in such country. Whether they need to register the trademark in this country, because the trademark or IP is the key asset of the brand, and registration of the trademark or the IP will help to protect the brand, avoid the dispute, avoid the infringement. And you also need to understand that the timeline for franchise registration or timeline for trademark registration is maybe take several years. So you should have a good timeline and well prepared for such registration before entering into the market. And also relating to the selection of the partner, like we also discussed in our panel discussion, because you also may want to select the good partner, do the due diligence, understand what the local law requires for the local franchisee, and arrange for the franchise agreement to have the clause, term, and condition to protect yourself during the relationship, and maybe also need to understand about the tax implication for the franchise business, because it's also a key issue to operate the franchise business, understand how much the tax will apply to your business, and any report obligation to the competent authority, and also the dispute resolution in the relationship. Yeah, there is some idea about the legal requirement.
Really important points on the legal side. And we actually have other questions related to this, and they involve, health and beauty businesses in Indonesia that are looking to expand into places like Vietnam. We have a question about salons to expand into Vietnam from the Philippines, for example. So all of this relates, obviously, to the legal aspect of it. And of course, my comment on these sectors too is that health and beauty and wellness and fitness, to be honest, are just incredible opportunities for a market like Vietnam with such a younger population, a very large consuming class, 105 million people, and probably not too many people realize this, but the GDP per capita nominal, not talking about PPP, nominal GDP per capita in Vietnam is actually now higher than it is in the Philippines and Indonesia. And it is expected to actually continue in 2030 to be slightly on par or maybe even slightly higher than Thailand. So it's definitely growing.
Yeah.
But of course, a lot of things can happen in between. But the idea is that this is absolutely a fast-growing market, and there are enormous opportunities in these sectors. Does anybody else have anything to add on that?
Yeah, actually, I can also add a little bit about the question about how to expand the beauty clinic and wellness in or
Please.
salon in Vietnam, because there are several steps that the foreign franchisor can consider recent about expand this in Vietnam, because like you said, Vietnam beauty and wellness industry is growing up very quickly several years, and the Vietnam also people also accept the new thing, and we also see a lot of foreign brand also come to Vietnam recently. And if you have already have a partner in Vietnam, so you can also thinking about the business model that you would like to expand in Vietnam. For example, franchise is a kind of the business model, and if the foreign franchisor do not need to have a local presence in Vietnam, so they can have the franchise agreement register with the Ministry of Industry and Trade. And when the approval available, they can sign the franchise agreement with the local franchisee, and the local franchisee will operate the franchise business and and uh, and pay the fee. And but there are also other options. For example, like you can set up the joint venture with the local franchisee. I mean, that's the local business entity in Vietnam, or even that you can set up your 100% foreign capital company in Vietnam as well. So it's important that you select the business model that you would like to operate in Southeast Asia, in Vietnam as well. So, and after that, you can do the franchise business. You also need to register the trademark, and also comply with the report obligation. Yeah, in short, is some key issue like this, but we can advise in more detail if you interested in expand the beauty clinic or salon in Vietnam.
Thank you for that. Yeah, a great reminder. After this session, of course, if you have specific questions or want to speak to any of our panelists, please do reach out to us via email or phone. and we will put you in direct contact with Miss Tu and anybody else on this panel, including myself, of course. Another question that is coming from Korea deals with the pub industry, the bar industry, and this might be appropriate for Victor regarding expansion to Southeast Asia. What are some of the key things they should be on the lookout for besides halal certification in certain markets, for example? Victor?
Yes, thank you, Sean. I will say it's really important to keep the brand identity while respecting local, habits and understand the culture. So define your customer first. And then second is all up in F&B. It's so important to maintain laser focus on trainings because it's how you maintain, I would say, top service, top hospitality, and with consistency. So in the pub and F&B industry, this is so important in each of your markets. And the third point is so important as well. And the most important is to find the right partners in each of the countries. The partners that will help you bridging the connections, connect to local authorities that will understand the local market. He or she knows much better than you. So finding the right partner is so important and someone who will brief and respect the brand. And it's also wonderful that we will share business with this partner. So if someone in Korea or anywhere in Asia is keen to connect, please let me know. I'm happy to spend time with you. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Victor. If I could just add one more thing to that, and that is, if you're looking to expand your pubs and bars and restaurants into this part of the world, besides halal, of course, one of the other key things beyond consumers, like Victor mentioned, is alcohol consumption in Southeast Asia, because obviously alcohol consumption is different between the individual countries. And of course, what you find is, in places like Indonesia, Malaysia, alcohol consumption is usually significantly lower than it is in places like Vietnam, the Philippines, Cambodia, Korea, and Japan. So just be aware of that alcohol consumption level, especially if your business is highly dependent on alcohol consumption. We probably have room for one or two more questions because we certainly have a lot. But we'll keep it to 1 to 2 questions. And if we don't get to your questions, please reach out to us and we can get back to you individually about your questions. And the next question is from the audience is, how can location intelligence and market data like those provided by Gap Maps help optimize site selection for franchises in competitive markets like Vietnam? Kai, I think that's straight up your alley.
Yeah. So I think from a very broad overview, the first place that you would normally start again, this term called the addressable market. Because as an example, in Vietnam, you probably have 101 million people. And there's this term called consuming class, which is really the people with that discretionary income. Let's say, in the main city of Ho Chi Minh City, it's probably about 9 to 10 million of those people are within that sort of consuming class percentage. So if you're talking about 33% of people is your addressable market based on the entire population of Vietnam. You want to understand where the distribution of these 9 million people are in Ho Chi Minh City, because they are not going to be concentrated in just a single location. Understanding how are they distributed is very likely going to be the first step. So understanding that addressable market. The next thing I would very likely look at is what I call the retail landscape. And that really identifies, let's say you are a fast food and QSR brand, how deeply penetrated are your competitors are in the different regions in Vietnam. Because that will very likely tell you what that market saturation is like and what the balance opportunity is like, coming back again to that addressable market element again. So let's say we are going to say that, within Ho Chi Minh City, we see that gap, and that gap is very likely able to support another 30 to 50 locations of this particular brand. Now that we've got a number, and we understand that macro environment, let's start looking at more granular data set to understand exactly what makes up a successful rollout for these 30 to 50 outlets. Again, number one being your top location, the least risky location. Number 50 being your most risky location for this current expansion plan that you've got from number 1 to number 50. So that's really a very top overview of how I will very likely tackle something like that.
Thank you, Kai. I appreciate that. Um, let's tackle one final question, and I think this could be very interesting for everybody in the audience. And the question is, can you share a specific case study of a franchise that successfully expanded in Vietnam or Southeast Asia, highlighting the critical factors that led to their success? Anyone want to tackle that?
Uh, I'll I'll start this one, Sean.
Well,
Uh,
thank you, Kai.
I'm not too sure if anybody knows this, but there's a homegrown brand here in Malaysia called Zeus Coffee.
Yep.
Zeus Coffee, I think, started 2017, 2018, somewhere around that time. And at that point of time, they probably have less than 50 outlets, I want to say. And it's clear if you view Zeus Coffee in Malaysia as an example, most of their outlets is about 500-meter radius apart. So that's a very high density that they have developed within that country. And it's a very data-driven one as well. It's very clearly visible that you can see, aside from CBD locations, of course, that they are about 500 meters apart. So that's really a very clear decision that was made by understanding that market opportunity within that space. And in today's environment, they've overtaken Starbucks as well. So that's Malaysia. They are also deploying that very same strategy by understanding that market entry studies to a lot of different countries. I believe in the last year, they have entered the Philippines and they are going to enter Indonesia as well. And there's definitely a rollout plan for other parts of Southeast Asia as well. So I think that's probably like the top of mind one for me.
Yeah, fantastic. I've seen a lot of news about Zeus Coffee. Just really major congratulations on their very successful expansion all across Asia. Um, you know, I'll add a couple. There are so many examples that we just don't have time to go through them. And typically we talk about F&B, but since Kai already spoke about F&B, let me give you a case study regarding education in Vietnam, the education sector. Of course, many of you know brands like Kumon from Japan that teaches mathematics and tutoring to young kids from grades 1 to 12. If you look at every country around Asia, Kumon does incredibly well, right? And there's a reason for why Kumon does so well. It's because they know what parents are looking for, and they know what parents want for the education of their kids, and they know what parents can afford. And brands like Kumon, they don't they don't want to target everybody. Not everybody is going to be a customer. It's this very specific market segment, that Chris and Victor were talking about earlier, where you have to define that segment very clearly, and then you have to service that market extremely well. The same can be said for Mathnasium from the United States, which was a client of ours, and they do exceptionally well in Vietnam, along with Kumon. And again, it's basically understanding the segment that they want to service and understanding what they're willing to pay and delivering good results as well, right? So operationally and service wise, you still have to deliver the results, but making sure that you're conveniently located by being in the right spot at the right time and targeting that message to certain groups eventually will make you very, very successful. So I think that wraps it up for now. I know we're about 14 minutes over our intended 60-minute. I want to thank all the panelists again for joining us here. And also, I would like to thank again COEX and VietRef for their partnership over the last decade or so that we've been partnering to grow franchising as a sector into Vietnam and Southeast Asia. So thank you very much. This is our contact info. We will be recording this. We have recorded this. We will be sending out update video clips. And so if you're interested in receiving this, please go ahead and give us your contact info if you haven't already, and we will forward you them once it is complete. Thank you again, everybody, and thank you to all the panelists.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
You.
Bye-bye.
Bye.